All right, for this one, I want to talk about something that's a little bit out there. I feel like most of what I talk about is a little out there. I think maybe this one in particular will seem maybe a bit more out there than my usual podcast. So I want to talk about what it's like to communicate with the dead. And wherever you fall on this, whether, everybody that claims to be able to speak with the dead is, a hypocrite or a grifter or out to get something, benefit in some way, present themselves as a psychic when they're not. There could be, financial reasons for this, right? Maybe it's a business that specializes in acting as a medium. A lot of people I've found coming back to the United States after 13 years in East Asia believe they can communicate with the dead. Or believe that there's a medium that can be found to reach your loved ones that have passed. More so than in East Asia, in my opinion. I've been back for about 6 months now, and I've had a lot of conversations with folks, and I think most people are open to this. I don't really have a financial gain to talk about this, the communications that I've had with the dead, for a couple reasons. The communications I'm going to be talking about are not very traditional. They're not very scientific. They are not open and shut. And I'll get to those reasons why they are not. So I do use an EVP, digital voice recorder, when I'm out at these haunted locations. So I usually have 4 phases, as I call them, when I'm engaged in, for lack of a better word, a seance. I call them communications, where I just try and communicate with any spirit that may be at the location I'm at. And these phases have different have the possibility of different outcomes. It's trying to communicate in different ways, right? So how can you communicate with the dead? You can communicate with the dead with a REM pod, right? So this is my REM pod. So this detects what? Movement. Your REM pod is not gonna pick up voices. It's gonna pick up any electromagnetic fields in the area, and you can change the sensitivity and all that to try to figure out if there is a spirit in that room. And you can argue whether REM pods are actually a good tool or a reliable tool at sensing ghosts or not. I'm not going to get into any of these debates. I'm just not. So that's one of my phases. The second phase is the EVP, or one of the other phases is the EVP digital voice recording. So what an EVP digital voice recording, a recorder rather, differs from maybe something you use as a psychiatrist or a therapist to record your sessions is the EVP can pick up very, very faint noises. That's kind of what they specialize in, right? So this idea that when ghosts communicate with us, it's not going to be at the volume that I'm speaking at right now. I also do, one of my phases is a Ouija board, and I'll use the Ouija board as a channel. And I think just because Ouija boards freak people out, right? Like there are some folks that they're frightened of a simple Ouija board, you know, and it kind of strikes me as really interesting, because, you know, I don't know the story of the Ouija board, but I'm assuming it's, you know, Parker Brothers or one of those, Milton Bradley, or, you know, one of those game companies that is out to make money, right? So there's a lot of financial gains to be made if you have devised a tool to communicate with the dead that just has just these creepy results, right? Okay, so the creepiest thing that I can say about a Ouija board is something that happened at the Lizzie Borden house. And when you book at the Lizzie Borden house, they send you this confirmation email, and they kind of tell you the rules. And one of the rules is no Ouija boards. And I was so interested in this. I was so interested in this idea that they didn't allow Ouija boards. So I was speaking with the owner. And so I had the basement for that night. And I was speaking with the owner, and I asked him, I was like, so what's the deal with the Ouija boards, man? And he's like, well, we got a Ouija board in the mail, and there was no return address, and there was just a Ouija board with a note inside that said, make it stop. Like, that is a creepy story, right? Like, that is legitimately creepy, whether you believe in ghosts or not. That's a creepy story. Somebody took the time to mail this Ouija board off. I can't think of another motive, you know, other than, you know, maybe somebody had some psychiatric issues. I can't think of a motive to send that to the Lizzie Borden owners, you know. Maybe if they put their name in their, you know, website and said, hey, make sure to give us a shout out on our Spotify account or whatever. But no, like, this was like, they didn't want to be identified, no return address. Super creepy, right? So yeah, I do incorporate the Ouija board just because it's just this creepy element. And I have a bell. I have a silver bell. It's my alternative to the death bell. I'm sure people have heard of the death bell, right? Those things are pretty cool. So yeah, I have phases in all these places, and the phase that I find always yields the most results is my REM pod and my EVP digital voice recorder. So I want to kind of hone in on communicating with the dead, because that's what the name of this podcast is. That's what I wanted to discuss. So I have queued here a couple videos. And if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple or your podcast platform of choice, you're not going to be able to see this, but you will hear the audio. So I want to mention a couple things when I'm communicating with the dead. It is not, and this is the reason I think that I'm a reliable source on I'm calling myself a reliable source on something. That's just funny. Here's why you should listen to me is another way I should say this. It's a weird way to say something, right? No. Here's why I don't think that I'm, you know, financially involved in any, you know, I'm not benefiting from this necessarily. Is that it's not a two-way conversation when I communicate with the dead, okay? So it's really the dead talking to me, and I don't even realize it while I'm on location. So like, when I mentioned, you know, at the beginning of this podcast that it's up for interpretation, and this is not an open and shut case. It's not. Like, all of my voices that I have recorded, you could say are other things, and I'm open to that. So, you know, I don't think this podcast, like, puts me in a particularly, what's the right word? I don't think it makes me come out particularly impressive. in the fact, if I had this back and forth conversation with ghosts, I think that would be a bit more impressive, wouldn't it be? And I had that documented. No, I'm giving you my experience. That's it. I have my experience, and I'm going to give that as for what it's worth. So when I'm on location, I do have this EVP, and I put it down, and I'll ask the spirits a series of questions. Usually it is, who are you? What's your name? Am I safe here? Do you want me to leave? Those type of stuff. Those type of commands. And I'll give, the spirit 30 seconds to answer or whatever like that. So that's how I use my EVP. And then I do make videos of all of the communications that I do. And I've been to the most haunted locations, arguably, in the United States. And I have had, some successful results, but again, sort of up for debate, I guess. The first one I want to talk about is the Thomas M. Cooley High School building. Now, this building is just so cool. It is massive. I think it's 5 floors. And it would have been one of the most spectacular high schools in the United States, in my opinion. Like, it was just gorgeous. The theater alone is like, Broadway level. And it's just this massive, imposing building in kind of a sketchy area of Detroit, right? And it's just there. And there's all this, really creepy graffiti inside. I remember one, it says hell, and then it points down the stairs, and have you seen a dead body, and just kind of crazy stuff written on the walls, right? And it's all pitch black, so all I'm working with is a headlamp and a flashlight. But so the communication I did was in the back kind of left of the building, and I was trying to communicate at the time with Diamond Taylor. So I did some research on Thomas Cooley, and she had been the R word behind Thomas M. Cooley High School, and she was killed. And she, I think she was 24. You're probably going to be picking up that plane in the background. I apologize for that. She was 24, and she was the R word and then killed. And I had a theory that, if there was a ghost at Thomas M. Cooley, perhaps Diamond Taylor would have been one of those ghosts. Her given name is Jody Taylor, rather. So I went in there expecting maybe to talk with her. And this is during so I've made 3 or 4 trips that were, long, like more than a month out, going to a lot of locations. And this was my first trip out. So I was brand new to this, ghost hunting stuff. And I was a skeptic, very skeptical. And I didn't expect to hear anything. And I didn't hear anything until I went back and I edited this video. And it kind of blew me away when I heard what you're about to hear. So whenever I hear from a spirit, if you will, there's sort of a noise that it sounds like almost like somebody's dropping my recorder. Like it's kind of this like, it's almost like a knock or a static noise that you can hear, and then you hear the voice. So almost every time I've heard a ghost voice on my EVP recorder, it sounds like almost the ghost is like clearing its throat, like before it speaks. And it's this really weird static noise, and then I hear the voice. So when I'm editing my videos, I'm listening for that static noise, because that's a key to me, or that's a clue to me, rather, that I'm about to hear the dead's voice. So here is what I heard at the haunting at the Thomas M. Cooley building.
Spirit is here. Please speak into the silver box that I'm placing down.
So you'll hear the clear. There. So you can hear that sort of static clear, the and then, I don't know if you can pick up on that. I can. Just get out. So I'll play it again.
If your spirit is here, please speak into the silver box that I'm placing down right now.
You hear the static. There. What's up, everybody? My name is... And then you hear just get out. So that was spine tingling to hear that, because to me that is clear as day saying just get out. I'm open to other opinions. I'm open to somebody that says, you know, Adam, that is just a bunch of garbage. I didn't make out anything. Okay, you know, I'm not out to prove that I'm right with this podcast. It's just my experience with communicating with ghosts. So I do have to, again, and I'm being, you know, very transparent in this, I have to enhance the audio when I get home as part of my editing process in order to hear these ghost voice. So that it's not a back and forth. It's not a conversation with the dead. I've seen a lot of these other YouTube guys, and it's, you know, they use Ghostbox, or they use these devices where they can do real-time communication. The Estes method, for example. My EVP reporter, my experience is different. I have to go back into my editing space, and that's where I hear it. So then I'm going to bring up another one, and this was at a place that is not known to be haunted at all. It was a building in Cleveland, and I kept seeing obelisk written everywhere. Obelisk Manor in spray paint all over this abandoned building. And really, I was in Cleveland to make abandoned building videos. I wasn't there to make haunted videos, but I just happened to find that this place was like particularly creepy. So I did a communication here, and you'll hear this one also has like the kind of the static noise at the beginning, and then this, you know, I'm open for interpretation in this. I think that it says, well, I'll play it first. All right, so let's go back to that again. So you can hear the clearing at the beginning. So that's the noise that I listened to, and then you can hear. I think it's saying Bathsheba, which, of course, Bathsheba is from The Conjuring, right? So what would Bathsheba be doing in Cleveland, Ohio, or why would an entity be talking about Bathsheba in, you know, Cleveland, Ohio? I don't know, but you can hear that at the beginning, that brief static noise, and then Bathsheba. Maybe not, you know. And people, you know, will kind of bring up things with me all the time, and they'll say, you know, maybe you're picking up a cell tower. So, you know, all right, you know, if that's what you want to believe. I'm not trying to prove that I can speak to the dead. I'm not. I'm just sort of going over my experience with communicating with the dead. So this is in the Crescent Hotel. This is kind of notorious. You've probably, if you're into hauntings, you've probably heard of the Crescent Hotel. It's just one of those places. So that's where Michael is, right? So Michael's the guy. He was an Irish builder, and he fell to his death when they were making the Crescent Hotel. And this dude, room 202, is just like notorious in the Crescent Hotel for all sorts of like paranormal reasons. So I was there, and this is what I picked up. So you'll hear the static noise, and then you'll hear so this is in Arkansas. So let's see if we can... So there's the static. I don't know if you, it's like the static. I am. So that one is a little bit tough to hear, and I could see that one being open for interpretation. I hear I am in like a very deep, weird voice. So let's play it again.
It's Michael here.
Yeah, so that's what I get. I get the that static noise, and then I am. I just think it's so interesting that every time I hear a ghost voice, I hear that same noise. Like I said, like the staticky, almost clearing its throat kind of feeling. I really think it's interesting. And I got involved in the paranormal because of what international travel did for me, because I wasn't going to, the Seychelles and sitting on the beach. I'm not going to the Maldives. When I travel, I'm going to, Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso, and I'm going to these places that are very challenging. South Sudan, places that are not doing particularly well. They're struggling. They could be currently at war. Or be dealing with issues with abductions, such as Mogadishu, Somalia, and that sort of adrenaline pumping experience when I moved back to the United States was missing from my life. Right, so here I am, gallivanting across the world, Mogadishu, Somalia, and Iraq, and Afghanistan, and North Korea, and then all of a sudden I'm in Boston. I'm in Portland, Maine, and like I needed something. Right, that just felt out there. So I started digging into the paranormal and abandoned building hunting, because that gave me the adrenaline that some of these war zones that I was traveling did. So that's kind of how I got into it. So this is in the Pine Barrens, and this is the first time I was in the Pine Barrens. I've been there a couple times now, hunting the paranormal. But in this particular one, I was looking for the New Jersey Devil, right? You probably heard of him. So this one is a little less conclusive, I think, but I want to use it as an example anyways.
How did you die?
Okay, so that is what I'm looking for. It almost sounds like the spirit is picking up the EVP in a way too. So let's go back to that.
How did you die?
I get help. I hear help. I hear something inaudible and then help. But I do want to pick up again on that, like it sounds like a staticky, somebody picking up a voice recorder. So let's do it again.
How did you die?
There it is. Help. I hear it clear as day. But again, I'm open to other thoughts. And I do not think this is conclusive evidence of the paranormal. So I do want to be like super open about that I'm not here putting on blast that, I'm finding all these ghosts and this is conclusive. It's with so much with the paranormal, it's, I don't know. I don't know that we have the most conclusive evidence out there. I will say the most conclusive evidence I have happened at the Lizzie Borden house, and I'm not. That's a story for another day, another podcast. But it was very conclusive. I'll just say that. All right. So this is the Madison Seminary. So this is in Ohio, and I was there because I was hunting Elizabeth. I am blanking on her last name, so let's listen to this.
Maybe there are other spirits.
Elizabeth Stiles is her name.
Spirit in this graveyard.
So Elizabeth Stiles was like kind of a badass. So she was a Civil War spy for President Lincoln, which is awesome, right? Because this is 1865, where women were not necessarily active military duty at this time, and it was just kind of, she was just kind of one of those bad A's, right? Like, she was out there in the South operating as a spy for the president. She just like was like really badass. So she was buried in there. I believe she's from Ohio, I believe. But the medicine seminary kind of just is creepy. It acted as this, I believe it was an asylum. Yeah, I think it was an asylum at first, or just one of those community places where people would drop the unwanted. And there was a lot of these in the late 18th century, early 1900s that just operated terribly. Like, there's a lot of, now we're learning all of the extent of how terrible we were. And then it operated, the medicine seminary, for a brief period as housing for several Civil War vets. And what was Elizabeth, she was a Civil War vet because she obviously had been active duty in the war. She was a spy, and that's where her resting place was. So I was like specifically looking for her. She's not who I ended up communicating with, so let's hear this one.
Maybe there are other spirits, not Elizabeth Stiles, but somebody else, maybe her daughter Sarah, or some other spirit in this graveyard. If you're here, I'm trying to communicate with you. Please speak into this silver box.
Alright, so I play it back.
Maybe there are other spirits, not Elizabeth Stiles, but somebody else, maybe your daughter Sarah, or some other spirit in this graveyard. If you're here, I'm trying to communicate with you. Please speak into this silver box.
Okay, so there it is. There's a brief, there's a brief moment of static, and it's always before a voice is about to come on my EVP, and I just think it's super interesting. All right, so I'm gonna go back 5 seconds. There it is. It's me. That's what I hear. Plain as day. It's me. And then he says his name, which I think sounds like Arthur Kemp, but it's really hard to hear. But let's hear again, like that noise you hear before the voice says it's me.
Or some other spirit in this graveyard. If you're here, I'm trying to communicate with you. Please speak into this silver box.
There it is. It's me. So, I don't know. I don't even think my mind is made up. I would say that I started as a paranormal researcher at, I thought maybe 99% that there was no entities out there. 1% believed that it was possible. And I did a 180. I'm now 95% sure that there are entities out there. And it's because of personal experience. I needed things to happen to me that I can't explain. And there are many a thing that have happened while I've been out on these, hunting these, ghosts. And, some of the most famous in American history, the Villisca Axe Murder House, for example. Like, all of these places I've stayed there, right? I bring my equipment, I stay there, and I do communications. And there's been a lot of successful evidence So that is my experience communicating with the dead.